Hi, everybody. Welcome to Radio Day. Questions. We've got guesses. I'm Nash. I've been doing Radio Dead Air for ages. And I'm also an IT professional. With me, as always, my producer, Mike Gearman.
Who is not happy this week.
Why are you not happy?
I had to redo my build at the last minute because you were critical of it.
I mean,
I hate the $600 limit.
the
I
reason,
swear, 3 years ago, we'd raised it to $650 or $700, and that would have been.
Okay, well, I mean,
Next year, it's higher than 600. I'm just telling you right now.
okay.
Inflation is a thing, Nash. I'm also regretting what I did yesterday.
What'd you do yesterday?
Del Taco. In my defense, they have very shiny advertising flyers, and it's like, I'm really, really hungry. And there on the kitchen table was a Del Taco flyer. Okay.
Yes, but now you know the regret.
Honestly, normally Del Taco doesn't give me this kind of regret. It was because of the non-Mexican sort of entry that I had. And you can argue that Del Taco in general is non-Mexican, but tacos that I had were okay. The quesadilla I had was fine. The shredded beef Mexican ramen was a mistake.
Okay, well, first up, we got a little news this week. Not a lot. Oh, I did want to share something with you. Had a little life hack here. So one of the things people kind of are concerned about, and rightly they should, security on your system, like having a webcam plugged in all the time or having a microphone plugged in. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I just disabled it, so that doesn't work. The problem is if you disable a microphone or a webcam in Windows, that's just a software flag. It's still...
Yeah, and other software can ignore it. I'm going to give a real-world example here.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have a program at work. It is the simplest, dumb little program. It's installed on all the vast majority of our work computers. It's called Toggle Webcam. And it is literally a dumb toggle program. If the webcam is enabled, it turns it off. If the webcam is not enabled, it turns it on. However, and it doesn't tell you which one it is. You have no idea which one it is if you don't have a camera active. So if you want to enable the camera, you run it, and it goes, camera is now disabled. You have to run it again.
Well, I think I may have...
But, hang on. If the camera is enabled, you've got the camera and you've got the camera app open, you can see yourself. And you run Toggle Webcam, and it says webcam is now disabled. It didn't actually sever any of the existing connections. It just said new stuff can't use the camera. That app is still working and showing you what's on the camera.
Well, yeah, I mean, even if you do it, any kind of software toggle is pointless.
Ignorable.
Yeah, it can be overcome with other software. What you need is a hardware switch, something that actually physically disconnects your device from the computer, be it a microphone or webcam or whatnot. And I found out a little bit of a life hack. You can build a switch. You can build a plain old if you want to. But there are these little cheap switches, fine, for about between $50. And you can find them other places too. Now what this device is supposed to be for is plugging in 2 or more devices, the same computer. And it has the forbidden connector on it, which I love. USB A to A, the forbidden connector. Don't ever use this in any other circumstance. This is the bad one.
Yeah.
But in this,
you can damage equipment.
yeah, because you can cause a short. But this specifically can use the A to A, because what it does is you plug one side into your computer, and then you can plug two devices into this, or you can flip it around and plug this into two different computers and one device into it. So you can share device between computers, or you can share devices on the same USB port. But other little
And if you just say, hey, I've got a device on A and I switch it to B, now device on A is shut off.
And if you don't plug anything into B, it's just an on-off switch. It's just a plain old on-off switch for your USB.
There's another category of item like this, similar to this, that you'll find out there that'll say it's an on-off switch for USB devices. Often, this is what you have to be careful with. This is why the one Nash has is probably works better. It definitely works better. Because a number of these USB on-off things are just power on-off, and they don't provide a data connection because they're really cheap. So you're thinking, hey, I've got a way to turn this on and turn this off. No, what you have a way is to turn off power, and it's not passing through data. So you've got an interrupter.
Essentially, what this does is it unplugs the device. As far as your computer's concerned, the device that was in the USB port just isn't there anymore. And this is a good, now understand, you can't use this as a mute or as a camera off button, because this is like as if you actually unplugged the device and plugged it back in. So
and no, there are times when using devices like this, where if you switch between something, you go off to on, sometimes your operating system will not recognize the device again right away.
So
it's going to be very device dependent.
This is mainly just a security caution, which I'm going to be using here, or just for if a device you want on there that you don't want turned on all the time. This little thing can come in handy. It's not very expensive, and if you're concerned about, like, if you have a webcam connection that you don't want on, the only secure way to shut off a webcam is to unplug it. That's what this does, without, actually having to unplug it. Jesus B, thank you for 23 months. You enjoyed Twitch. So yeah, there's that little bit. Let's go to our one news story this week, because we're probably gonna be talking a lot. We got still taking questions, of course. We have room. Us ready. Also, probably going to be talking a whole bunch about the build, about our build choices for the budget guide. But one of the things we were looking forward to, with the death of crypto, was potentially cheap used video cards. However, because these video cards can also be used for the AI bubble, life has found a fucking way. So, I'm planning to put this on YouTube, so I'm gonna have to watch my mouth a lot. I'm sorry, everyone. They frickin' and freaking. So what they've able.
So what you're saying is no J impersonations.
Yeah, no. It's in my head. I can do Silent Bob. I do Silent Bob very easy. So what they figured out how to do is they're taking old RTX 3080s. Now 3080 was a fairly powerful GPU, but it was limited by the fact it had a smaller selection of RAM. 10 gigs, and then later there was a 12 gig version. Much like cryptocurrency, what these AI generating software requires is a lot of RAM. What companies are doing is they're taking old RTX 3080s and they're either creating new custom PCBs for them, or they're modifying old PCBs. Because the trick is you can remove the 1 gigabyte RAM chips that are on the video card and replace them with 2 gigabyte RAM chips. So effectively, you can just simply turn an old RTX 3080 10 gig into a 20 gig. the significance of this is now you're going to have these companies realizing the ban on China on shipping out stuff like the H100 and even some of the lesser ones, even the RTX 4090. What you're going to have is you're going to have these companies that are snapping up all these used video cards and turning them into fast and dirty AI cards. And the 3080 is uniquely poised for this because you can add more RAM to it. So it's one of those, but I feel certain
I feel certain that people are going to try using these, and there's going to be some significant short outs in companies going, why is the server rack on fire?
Yeah, it's gonna need to have some sort of custom cooling solution.
I think it's going to need to have a custom power solution as well.
No, not just for adding RAM. RAM is RAM. And besides, typically what they do is they underclock this stuff. They're mostly concerned not with the raw. Well, I mean, I guess AI is different. They do. But this might be able to scale down. I'm not sure. I'll have to look at the particulars of, say, the 4070 Ti. We already know the clamshell RAM design they used on the 4060 Ti to add double the RAM to it. That technique might expand to, say, a 4070 Ti or maybe 80 cards they can still get over there. Use the end result here is prices getting driven the frick up, even on used stuff, just because of yet another rush to tech bubble. I mean, I was reading today that the two biggest companies that are dumping all their money into this.
Yeah.
Microsoft, which we kind of knew about through OpenAI.
Yeah.
And Facebook.
Well, of course, Facebook is. You know why Facebook is doing it?
Because they just lost $36 billion on the metaverse.
Well, that too. No, because if they have AI content that is indistinguishable from actual people content, then they can make it look like more people are using their service, thus selling more ads and telling people who are not using the service, no, actually, lots of people are still here.
Eventually, they can just advertise to the bots. The bots can advertise to other bots. It'll be totally independent of itself. No need for human intervention whatsoever. It'll just be a closed ecosystem where advertisers feed it money in order to show advertisements to other AI. Yet none of them will be empowered to buy anything. Yeah. So that's a little bit like hell for these machines.
It's feels a bit like the movie Brazil.
Yes, the absurdity, the horrid absurdity. All right, so that's the news this week. We're gonna get questions soon, and we have a break. Ad break. Speaking of advertisements, yeah, but no, it's what makes it funny to me is Meta is flailing, and Microsoft also kind of flailing.
Microsoft's trying to find a way to bring in more money because people are going, well, yeah, no, we have Office. You're not growing business with us with Office 365 because you raise the monthly fee too high. We will just go somewhere else.
Yeah.
There are other products. They're not great.
All right. Let's get to the build list now. All right. The idea behind this is we're going to give you our recommendations for parts you can purchase. The reason I kind of wanted to stay around 600 is what was like $600 console, Xbox Series X and the PS5. They dropped down to around 500. And you have the Steam Deck out there, which is a pretty good gaming experience, either portable or plugged into a TV. Whatever we get at the budget level has to be able to compete with those options and offer something better than those options. If it doesn't, what's even the point? Well, I mean,
but part of the point is, hey, I can't do my schoolwork, except in probably a very finite number of classes,
Yeah.
on an Xbox.
Aldera Rising, thank you for the prize. Hope you enjoyed that great emote. Appreciate you very much. But one of the problems this year, we're gonna get into this as we choose our CPU. AMD is playing silly games.
Yes, there's stuff. I did try to do an AMD build, and you pointed out that it didn't game very well. So
at all, and we'll talk about that. That's a problem. If you are at the budget level, honestly, for anyone, if you're coming in at a very low end build, there is no AMD option. The only option for budget builds right now is the Intel Core i3. Comes in at just under $100. Quad core, 8-thread, a little antique-y by our standards, but still very capable for gaming use case. However, you'll also notice something else. This CPU is what, 2-3 years old now?
Yeah.
But it's still being sold new. Another thing to notice, initially Mike's build was, he chose the AM5 Ryzen 7600, which is a good CPU. Don't get me wrong, but it's a $200 CPU. That's not Mike's fault. The problem is AMD has had this business idea that goes back to, say, I want to say the 3000 series of Ryzen. What AMD started doing, and it was very successful for them, was instead of worrying about the R3 entry-level CPU, what they started doing was saying, well, I have an idea. Instead of developing a competitive Ryzen 3 CPU this generation, why don't we just drop the prices on the previous generation CPU that are still viable and can still run on these motherboards, and we'll just let those be the budget option. We won't actually bring in any new budget options. Now what's happening is we're in the gap between AM5 and AM4. Lots of people are still on AM4. There's still a lot of AM4 around. People are just doing drop-in upgrades on their CPUs. And as far as AMD is concerned, they're like, okay, that's the budget option for people. We'll just let that be the budget option, and we won't bother to make a Ryzen 7300 or a Ryzen 71. At least not this generation. I think they're just toasting on that. So that means Intel owns, and this is bizarre to say, I noted it before, but Intel owns the budget CPU space. It's fricked up.
It's really not. Like 5 years ago, if you told people working Intel, you're going to own the budget space, they'd be like, we don't want the budget space.
Right. They would.
Because they were charging out the ass. Sorry about the cursing there.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Bleep, 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 bleep. It's like freaking Morse code right now. But yeah, it was.
Sorry. The pachinko machine that is my brain reminded me just now of a person who was not supposed to be cursing on a show. And so he was cursing on a show, knowing that it was getting beeped, and did it in such a way that the Morse code was also swearing.
It is kind of glorious. I like that idea. All right. So next up, now we've selected our CPU. The Core i3 12100F is a perfectly serviceable. It is a great entry.
I mean, you might want a couple more cores in there, but you know, we're at a $600 level right now.
Another reason I couldn't in good, like AM4 is still, they're still for sale. You still get it, but here's the reason why I couldn't in good conscience recommend AM4.
No upgrade path.
Absolutely no. And more than just no upgrade path, it's still DDR4. 2024. I mean,
you might get a massive deal on stuff.
Yeah.
But
you're going to be, it's a dead end. And DDR4 is also a dead end. This should be the year to move to DDR5. That's part of why the motherboards for Intel are actually kind of useful. Intel decided with their Alder Lake and moving up, they would have simultaneously DDR4 and DDR5 motherboards beside each other. Means the 12100F will work with a DDR5 motherboard. We both picked really similar ones, and we picked them from the same company because they're the only ones who are really servicing. Pardon me. This sector. We both chose ASRock motherboards because they have, wildly enough, come roaring back after a while. They used to be like the option nobody would touch. Absolutely nobody would touch an ASRock motherboard because they were. As the motherboard prices spiked this generation for both Intel and AMD, ASRock kept their prices down, and people are like, wait a minute, their quality has gone way up. These are actually good motherboards.
They're relatively solid. They're relatively highly reviewed. I mean, the one I picked, okay, on PC Parts Picker only has 2 ratings, but they're both 5s.
I picked the lower end version of this. Mine was the ASRock B760M H/M.2 Micro. Wow, what a thrilling name. This one comes in at $90, which is not a bad price for this. However, you do have to make some sacrifices. You'll notice that the VRM cooling on this board is not that significant. Now, that's not a huge issue because this is not an overclocking board. You can't overclock anything that's not a Z edition motherboard. So it doesn't matter what CPU you end up putting in here, you can't overclock. So we're not worried about the VRMs on there. Mike went with let's see, which one was yours? Went with
the ASRock B650M Pro RS Micro.
Right. That up. So many,
and I'll tell you,
so many windows.
The big reason I picked this board. 3 M.2 slots.
That is a good point.
So I was looking at expandability and okay, yes, I know we're not doing a huge amount of gaming with this build.
Well, no, you can do this game. This is a pretty good, solid 1080p gaming build.
Yeah,
I would, yeah, even some 1440p on.
Yeah. So, but I looked my build philosophy on at least our budget and our mid-range builds is which parts are the biggest pain in the butt to replace.
That's true.
And a motherboard is it's just a pain because you have to take out everything.
Like everything has to be unplugged. Everything has at the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. So I said, let's spend a few more dollars on the motherboard because we're not replacing that anytime soon. And so I said, hey, what's something that if we want to throw in a video card at a later point, we can.
Now, there is one option, but it will bust the budget. There is one of the things that's still out there for motherboards, Intel, is Z690, which that's the previous generation of motherboards to the B760 and the B790, or the Z790. But the Z690 is fully compatible across Alder Lake. The advantage there is it's a Z-class board, which means you can overclock. So you can start right now with that 12100. And then if you move up to, say, a 13900K or something later on, you'll have a board that can handle it. Now, you miss out on a couple of features like the PCIe 5.0, video card slot, and a couple other different things. But overall, a much more solid board. However, it would raise the overall price of the build by $50, at least for the one I picked. It was an ASRock Z690.
And we're both right at our limit. So
yeah, we are. I was riding the edge of it. I was like picking around the edges here.
I got to say, I did my initial build the Sunday after, and I was like $6 over, and I'm like $6 I can deal with.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later, it jumped up $80.
Mine did.
I'm like, oh yeah, all the Cyber Monday sales ended.
I had to go back and recalculate myself because of that same shit. I had gotten it under 600 with that ASRock Z690 in the build, and then all the sales went away. Crap. So Yeah, Daryl says that's why I went with ASRock, your new build. They load up on the end up 2. Your has 5. That's right. And just the build quality is just really shot up. But Gigabyte is also a good one, even at the lower end of here. This one's actually got heatsink for the VRMs, which is power. It's not. It'll make the system a little more stable. You're not overclocking, but it will give it the ability to boost higher for longer within its own envelope of what Intel already allows without overclock. Memory. We kind of chose about the same one.
Okay, so I have a question though.
Yeah.
For $90,
yeah,
I got 32 gigs of memory, and for $83, you got 16.
You got 16.
No, I got 32.
No, it's 16 gigs, 2x8. It's the Kingston Fury B. I'm looking at it right now. It's the $82.67.
Yours is Kingston Fury.
Right. So is yours.
Oh, we're going back to my my other budget build. Okay.
Yeah.
The redo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But
we see me bouncing between my two builds is where I'm going.
They're very close. They're very close. We both went with Kingston Fury DDR5 6000 RAM. You went with the CL40. I went with CL36. It's about a $7 difference.
Yeah. And since I'm currently $22 over, that $7 adds up. But
a nice thing about DDR5 RAM that we are discovering is it is incredibly robust. If you look on YouTube, there's a fella goes by the name of BuildZoid. He's really into the nuts and bolts of the engineering of this. And he has a couple of overclocking guides for RAM. And even my RAM that I purchased from the store was DDR5 5600L. Or no, not DDR5 5600. Oh, it's not CL36. But thanks to his build guide, I was able to clock that up to DDR5 6000 with no trouble. Completely stable, very little effort. This RAM, DDR5, has a lot of headroom that hasn't been exploited yet, which is yet another reason why I'm saying it's time to move away from DDR. Whichever one of these two you buy, CL40, CL36, you'll be able to very simply and easily overclock it yourself. Just follow a couple guides out there. You might be able to get this up to 6400. You might be able to get up to 7200, depending on how well your RAM overclocks. We can't really overclock CPUs anymore with the way they've changed the boost and whatnot. But we can overclock RAM, and that will add to some performance. So it's the last frontier for overclocking, and I feel like I got a value on mine because, 5600 when Ryzen 5 was, I built mine when Ryzen 5 AM5 first dropped. And shit was still expensive back then. So I feel like I got a deal on mine because I had to buy cheaper, but I was able to clock it higher, which we're going to see a lot of that coming up. Of course, we're also going to see some like native DDR5 8000 and crap coming. It's going to be weird with the next. Okay. For our, storage, we both picked about different brands, but about the same thing at about the same price. I picked a Patriot 960 gig, not quite, kind of 1 terabyte, kind of cheating there.
Keeping in mind, of course, that a lot of things that are labeled 1 terabyte, they're going, oh, we're dividing by this instead of this, and so what you're getting is not actually what you think you're getting. So yeah,
I picked the Patriot 310 960. You picked Team Group, which is also another Team Group's a respected name. MP33 1 terabyte. Down at this level, M.2 drives are technically, these are PCIe 4.0. Well, yours is a 3.0. I think mine's a 3. Yeah, it's 3.0.
Yeah.
PCIe
I don't think we could afford a 4.0.
Yeah. Well, even down at this level, PCIe 3.0, it's backwards compatible with PCIe 4.0 and 5.0. So if you've got a motherboard that can handle 4.0 and 5.0, it can handle 3.0.
With Nash,
Mhm.
the noticeable exception of your computer that had some issues and had to swap some stuff around.
I'm pretty sure that's Asus. They've got the Asus, their BIOS on this year. I've been super disappointed with it. I've been making do. PCIe 3.0 drives, they're cheap, they're on sale, they're on a fire sale right now. They're perfectly viable to use available build like what I would expect.
And they're perfectly viable on an above entry level build for a data drive. Like I wouldn't necessarily I certainly won't put on the unlimited build. Put it there because why would you? It's the unlimited build. But on the mid-range build, if I end up with, for example, $45 left, I'm like, now I can't figure out anything else to put in this. So I'll throw in another 1 terabyte drive just to.
Like what you can honestly expect to do is what the idea for this build is. This is a framework to start from, viable functional system as a jumping off point that you can upgrade considerably later. Or we're just, if you're watching for looking for deals and ideas for lower down stuff, there you go. But PCIe 3.0 is still perfectly viable for a boot drive for now. You're not going to, unless you're doing some really specific work, you're not going to have much of a notice between the load times. Maybe on games you'll. But what you can,
I would say very much depends on the game.
And what you can do now is you get this drive, and then later on you get a PCIe 4.0, 5.0. I would, however, get your drives now. We're gonna talk about this a little bit more for next week. For next year, every flash RAM manufacturer has been signaling they want to bring prices back up. Have an abundance of drives they can't move right now. So what they want to do is they want to cut production, clear this stuff out of the channel, and then start making new drives again, which means this is the best time right now, here to December, early next year. This is the best time to get yourself either a second hard drive or a bigger hard drive or whatever. M.2 drives, get them now. PCIe 4.0 is perfectly good. Even 3.0 is good. Get them now, because next year
I may even get a few, not to install in this guy, but just to have them on hand.
Yeah, I've seen 4 terabyte M.2 drives just over 150. Yes, there are some really good deals right now. But next year it's going to get rough. This is a great time to grab M.2 drives because this is the cheapest I've seen them in. It's part of what is enabling this build to be around 600 in the first place. Storage being about $50 for a 1 terabyte drive, that's pretty good.
And memories, I mean, DDR5 is not awful right now.
No, it's come down a lot. DDR5 has come down a lot. It's time to start adopting it
because everyone started making it.
Yeah. It's really worth it to move on. Even if you decide later on you want to go from Intel to AMD, you want to move to a different platform, because eventually you might. If you have the DDR5 now, that's going to serve you for 5 years to come. You'll be able to move that to a new build, no problem. It saves you money on building something else. You have it now, you just move along with it. So DDR5, now is the time to switch over because it gives you a part you can transfer to. It's only be SSDs for desktop or all drives. Yes, all SSDs. Hard drives, no. Platter hard drives, spinning hard drives, no. That's not an issue. But SSD.
Yeah, the only time you would buy a platter hard drive, I think, these days, if you have a specific application that requires it for some reason. And I can't think of one off the top of my head other than it's backwards compatible. This ancient system will not recognize SSDs or M.2. We need a spinning hard drive.
SSDs you'll also notice that there are some removable external drives that are based on SSDs. Anything that is solid state drives, M.2, That's all NAND flash. That's the part that's going to be, they're going to be cutting production on to raise prices. So now it's any kind of SSD based storage, time to get it. For graphics cards. Okay, you get it.
I'm just going to say I ran out of money.
You went with an RX 5500 XT, which serviceable. I would honestly say it's a serviceable card. It is. We are kind of at a terrible point with graphics cards right now because at the low end, things aren't great. You went with the 5500 XT. I would not have gone with that, but you were kind of juggling some stuff. My call was the RX 6600 8 gig. And this is taking into account that this one didn't show up for either of us because they just changed the price today. There is another option down at the low end of graphics cards right now. That is Intel and their A750.
I admit I didn't even remember Intel made graphics cards today. Never crossed my mind until just now.
They're down to $170 for an 8 gigabyte A750. It is 30%.
That is right between my price and yours.
It is 30% faster than the RX 6600, but there's a huge asterisk on it. The drivers are still a mess. They're much better than they were. They have done a whole lot more to improve. Intel has really worked on this. They are committed to it, and the drivers have matured a lot. However, it has a lot of problem with DirectX 11 games. It's fine with DirectX 12. It's fine with Vulkan, but depending on the game, DirectX 11 and 9, older games, have some issues with this. I would feel more, as a recommendation to most folks, I feel more comfortable recommending something like an RX 6600. Slower, but it is more tried and true. The drivers are mature. We know it will work with just about everything. If you feel like you can tweak things, if you feel confident in your build stuff, the A750 might be something you look at. But if you're going to build this for someone else, especially if this is going to be a build you're going to be kid or someone else, just to get them started, Intel, they almost had it this year. They got really close. They've done a lot of work, and it's really impressive what they've done in the course of a year with these cards. And there are some use cases for them, especially for video encoding. Holy crap, the AV1 on these things, considering the price and the speed they can encode on AV1, these things are going to be great in a few years as coding cards. And you slap this in there with your other shit as for streaming, and it will, it'll take the weight off a lot of your other stuff. But right now, for gaming and for everyday use as a daily driver, the best entry-level card right now is the RX 6600 at 8 gigs, $185. That's not a great deal, but a card that will handle 1080p gaming pretty much no problem. You'll be able to turn up all the settings to medium on most stuff, high on some older games. Don't expect to do ray tracing here. It can do it. It has the ability. It has the technically it can ray trace, but if you do, it's gonna kill the performance on this thing.
Yes, this is the sort of technically I can get my Mini Cooper up to 120 miles an hour.
Yeah, technically.
Practically, it's not happening for a number of reasons. One of which is I live in Southern California.
Yeah. All right, we went two different directions with our cases, but they're pretty close in price range. In fact, I got lucky and got a $10 rebate currently on the one I chose.
Okay. So what I'm going to note is your fan, your case has 3 fans.
Right.
My case has 4 fans.
That's true.
So that might be the $10 difference right there. Mine has a shroud for the power supply and space for 2 SSDs down there in the shroud in case you go going that route. And built-in dust filters that you can set up to be removable one of two ways. You can either pin them in or you can have them magnetic.
This is the Deep Cool CK560 ATX mid tower. It's got a mesh front. And it includes 3 120 millimeter ARGB fans and 1 140 millimeter exhaust fan. So this is very generous with the fans that come included. And at this price range, when you choose a case, what you should be looking for, 2 things, always 2 things with gaming cases. Number 1, mesh front, no glass front panels.
Well, or say a hybrid mesh front, if at worst.
Like one of the ones that has intake on the side instead of the front, so you have a glass front. But it's got to have mesh on it. Do not have a fully glassed in case. High thermals and bad airflow impede performance because the CPU and GPU cannot clock as high as they would otherwise. It means whatever you spend on these parts essentially can't make the full use of the performance. It's getting choked by the bad airflow.
I will say this model also comes in black. If that's for some reason, PC Parts Picker thought it was $20 more in black, and I said no.
Now, the other thing you want to look for at a case down at this layer is free included fans. There are some that are doing it, like Deep Cool is doing it. Montech is another brand down at this level that's trying to be competitive and give away free fans with their systems. These are not probably the best fans in the business. These are probably really kind of just middle of the road.
Honestly, if you were to buy these fans separately, they'd probably be around $5 each. Or a batch of 3 for $12 or something like that.
But bundled included with a case, they can come off as a deal. These are ARGB fans, so you get nice little blinky lights. And a 140 in the back. So you got one more fan than me with this one. This is also has a lot of space for radiators. You want to make sure whatever case you get, even if you're not going with a water cooler, and neither one of us went with any sort of cooler. We went with the stock included basic one. That's one you'll have to upgrade later, but there are a lot of good options though.
And by the way, because I was with either of my builds here was going with the stock cooler is why I was looking for what cases have a lot of fans.
But you want space for a radiator for later. Get a liquid cooler later. At least a 360 millimeter. Just make sure one 360 millimeter radiator can fit in your case. Somewhere in the configuration it can handle.
And by the way, a neat thing about Deep Cool's website, at least for this case, is it has a little configurator on there saying, okay, what kind of fans do you want? Here's where you can place them. So you say 360, it goes, you can put it here.
We're also at the point now that you can get affordable cases with the USB 3.1 Type-C connector on the front. So there's no reason to look for one that doesn't have that. That's a feature you should be grabbing. And both of our cases that we chose have. No, what I was going to say about air cooling, or at least coolers that pass the stock, this will probably be the first thing you upgrade. And there are a lot of fantastic, cheap air coolers. The Assassin King 120. I just picked one of those up for our media. I was using a stock cooler on it, and it was starting to throttle. I was like, I tried to save some money. I used an old AM3 stock cooler. Pretty good. It was beefy. But even then, it was still choking. So for like $17 with shipping and tax, I picked up an Assassin King. Yeah, it was Thermalright Assassin King 120. It's a 120 millimeter tower cooler. Problem solved. It's not the best in the world, but it does the job really dang well. There's a lot of cheap entry-level coolers right now, under $20, that if you can't buy them when you get the full system, you can get it later. My case, I went with something similar. Mine only has 3 fans. I went with another. Deep Cool is a recognizable name. Ontex recognizable name. Fantex recognizable. Fantex is another one. PHANTEKS. I went with the.
It's a name you've seen if you've not, even if you've not bought it. It's you're gonna go. I sort of recognize that.
This is the Fantex Eclipse G300A. Comes with 3 ARGB fans. Very similar. It's got a mesh front, very similar to what Mike was looking at. USB-C on the front, space for 240 millimeter, 360 millimeter. It's got a lot of range. There are a lot of good stuff down here. People say this is a nice one to build in. Although yours has got a couple more USB slots on the front, so that might be it. Because yours has,
Mine has USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C and Type A.
Oh, it's only got 2 ports on yours too. I thought yours had all right. Well, 2 ports. I guess that's all you really need. So yeah, they're they're
pretty compatible.
There's a lot. It's a lot more competitive at that level than it's been in a long, which is nice to see. All right, last one is the power supply, and we both went with the exact same one. This is, without a doubt, bottom of the barrel, but it will flip and work. The Thermaltake Smart 600 watt 80 plus certified. Now, normally we see 80 plus certified, there is a an indicator after it, like bronze or silver,
gold. No, this is
80 plus certified. The very base entry, which means you will get at least 80% efficiency from this unit. Not fantastic.
Part of this is because power supply prices are really ridiculous right now for some reason.
Depending on what you get, yeah. This one as a budget unit for $40 for a 600 watt power supply, that's really good. Thermaltake's a noted brand. They will stand behind their work, even though there were some cheap ones a while back that exploded. Gamers Nexus covered that, but these aren't those. These are different. This isn't modular, however. At this price range,
no,
you're not getting modular.
At this price range, it'd be hard to get even semi-modular.
Yeah, but for 600 watts for $40, that's not bad. You've got some expandability with it. You can hold on to it for a while. Maybe you'll keep an eye toward upgrading this later, but you've got some range. It's not going to be the worst thing in the world for a while. And for an entry-level system, this will hold on. It's just not going to be efficient. It might hit your power bill a little harder. But yeah, just for an entry level to get the price down, $42. It's not bad, but yeah, you got to do what you got to do. So yeah, that's overall. Now, if you want to look at our builds, I'm going to post them later on social media and whatnot. So you find that on my Twitter. You find that on my Blue Sky, on my threads.
Yeah, make sure you use the updated build I sent, the one that's marked I hate it.
Yes. We'll put those up later so you can examine them at length if you want. But just pretty much, the low end was not well served this year. Intel is the only people still trying to make low-end CPUs, budget CPUs. And AMD has just got this strategy of using their previous generation as the low end. That worked okay with the 3600. Not so good with the Ryzen 5000 because it's a dead-end platform. And I can't in good conscience tell people, no, stick with AM4. If you have AM4 right now, and you're on a tight budget, throwing in at like a 5800X3D or something bigger than you've had before, perfectly viable option. It'll let you keep your system for another 2 or 3 years without having to worry. But if you're starting fresh, you should avoid AM4. It's DDR4 platform. There's not going to be any more upgrades for it. Going forward, it's time to let it go. But AM5 is not viable for entry level, and that's stupid and it sucks. Hate it, but it should be, because it's weird that AMD, who were the kings of entry level for like forever are like, nah, we're not going to play that game. Not going to go there. All right, we got a couple questions we're going to answer now. I'm going to jump ahead because your brother popped in here. You got a question from your brother.
Oh, lovely.
Hey, Nash, Floofs, Cat Beasties, and Little Brother. Now, that's funny because...
it's Eric.
This is a funny, if you're not aware, Mike is one of 3 triplets. There's Mike, Patrick, and Eric. And apparently Eric is the one who I'm pretty sure he said I came out first. Is that
He's the oldest one by 3 minutes.
By 3 minutes. Okay, yeah. So he gets to call you. I could see your family being like, yeah. All right. That's dick move. All right. I have a problem with my router. It's a Linksys pause 4. There's your problem.
Yep.
E5400 wireless router has the latest firmware. Anywhere from 2 to 4 times per day, maybe more if I don't catch it. I lose all internet connectivity. Wired connection, no wireless, nothing. Cable modem doesn't show a disconnect during those times. Comes back after 10 to 30 seconds. I swap cables around, give it fixed leases to my PC, extended the lease time for DHCP to 9,999 minutes. Nothing seems to help. Time to replace?
Yep.
Yeah. One of the things you'll note about routers, they don't last in a weird way. It's most hardware has this weird resiliency to it, but routers tend to stop working. Parts wear out on those a lot faster than I've seen on just about any other tech. Routers, parts of it, even I had a nicer router before the one I have now, and over time the radio was acting up, and eventually they die. It's hard to explain why, even on the nice ones.
I'll say part of it's possibly because they're basically always on. You may turn your computer off. No one goes around and goes, oh, yeah, I'm going to be out at work for the next 8-9 hours. Let me turn the router off. I'm going to be asleep for the next 8 hours. Let me turn the router off.
Yeah, I mean, it's the routers, even with the router on, even when you're not there doing anything, routers still do a lot of work in the back. I don't know how they handle our power states or whatnot. I haven't looked at it. But I don't know. I've noticed them burn out a lot faster. It's probably time to look into something new. As we always say, we recommend Asus routers just because
they're solid as a rock, and their firmware and their interface is very capable. They provide regular updates on their firmware. Mm-hmm. And what's your budget in this case?
Yeah, you should. When it comes to routers, we recommend spending no less than $100 on a. Anything under $100, you're going to get garbage. You're going to end up having to replace later. Like, what is it from Ring World talking about the boot theory of economics?
Discworld.
There you go. Not Ring World.
Ring World is a completely different
thing. Yeah. I'm
going
to get killed.
Way different.
Yeah. Discworld, like the theory.
Vime's theory of boots.
Yeah.
A person will have spent 10 times as much on cheap boots over 20 years and still have wet feet.
That kind of comes in with the routers here. You can buy a $50 router, but you're going to be replacing that $50 router in 2.
Yeah. Now, that said, if you find a router, especially from Asus, that is normally say 120, 130, and it's on sale for somewhere for 99, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That the sales is independent of the normal.
Eric,
our normal limit.
No, TP-Link is one of those brands I would absolutely avoid no matter what.
Yeah, no.
The only 2 I really recommend are Asus or Netgear's Nighthawk series, because they've come a long way with those. Those are really good. Those are really good quality now. They've worked real hard to try to be on a par with Asus. The competition in the market. Who knew?
Hey dear, TP-Link is what I had when I lived at Cornell Arms in South Carolina. It was the first one I bought there. I replaced it 6 months later. And not because the building got struck by lightning and it lost capability. That was the second router.
Aldera says, I have a TP-Link router, renamed it a PP-Link router. Not very good. I would not touch. Pretty much, you can check Asus's website. You're going to want something, obviously, Wi-Fi 6, even though Wi-Fi 7 is coming.
But nothing's using Wi-Fi 7 right now. It's a capability you don't need.
Yeah. Let me see.
I would say for you, the RTAX68U would probably be fantastic.
Yeah.
It is probably the least expensive one that they have in that
Bring it up on
range.
screen. And of course, as always, don't buy the gamer routers.
No, don't. If it says Republic of Gamer on it, two things. One, it's going to look like the crown of the Witch King from Lord of the Rings, and two, you're paying a 25% at minimum premium for it to say ROG. They may be perfectly nice people, but they charge for their logo.
Another nice thing about Asus routers is if you ever decide to upgrade later, a very good mesh software built in. So you can use them to expand your range with very little effort. So it gives you a little bit of expandability as you go forward, even the older one. So all right. Next up, let's go with the ones we already. Okay, hello, Nash and Mike. For Black Friday, my girlfriend got a deal on an electric air blower and gave it to me. I don't want to be ungrateful, but I'm concerned because I've always heard using motor-based blowers generate static electricity, and you shouldn't use electronics. Something I should be worried about? I've tried looking it up, but I can't find a answer. Happy holidays, Jay. It's one of those it depends things, but I will say that used to be.
If you're talking about a leaf blower, then yes, I would not use that on your electronics.
Oh, for a long time, like as of from the 90s up until like the start of this decade, canned air was pretty much all canned air or an air compressor was all people would recommend, because there was this concern brought on by vacuum cleaners and how they function, that the motor would generate static electricity and you can transfer that to your system and you can try something. However, there have been a wave of cheapish $40, $50, and sometimes under electric rechargeable air blowers to take the place of canned air. They are designed not to be static electricity generators because their entire purpose is for electronics. Part of what's facilitated this is the improvement in lithium-ion batteries and rechargeable stuff. You can put in better motors without having to worry about charging it. Now, of course, there were some AC based. The prices have come way down on. I would recommend getting one of those over using canned air these days, mainly because canned air, compressed air in cans, you still run the risk of dealing with liquids if you goof up. You ever done that with the compressed air? You like tilted it the wrong way and suddenly you're spraying frost across your computer. You're like, oh no.
Yeah, that's happened once or twice, but it's usually I've been using it from far enough away that I haven't been spraying frost across electronics, just across the stuff next to electronics.
Yeah. They are, as in terms of being cost effective, run out so fast that they're really a scam in how fast you have. So getting one of those, or using an air compressor. I mean, if you have access to one, you have to be careful. But the small little electric blowers, those are viable these days. I wouldn't worry about it. I think you're okay. Okay. Hi, Nash and Mike and Floofs. Only have an opinion question for you guys. I'm coming from an RTX 2070s. Would it be better to 1, wait for the RTX 50 cards, 2, bite the bullet and get an RTX 40 card, or 3, try to go AMD? Thank you, Nathan. Oof.
I mean, I think if you're coming from a 2070, okay, so part of it's going to depend on what your budget is. I still think bang for the buck for an upgrade right now is it's still AMD.
Yeah. Like the deals you can get on a 6700 XT, still brand new, still with a warranty out of the box. An RX 6800 XT, which is like the sleeper deal right now, considering that in certain instances, the 6800 XT is faster than the 7800. The big difference between getting an AMD video card and an NVIDIA video card is you lose access to NVIDIA's proprietary technologies like DLSS, and yeah, frame generation. You also lose their version of ray tracing. The AMD stuff can do ray tracing, and they have their own version of DLSS called FSR. It's open source. It's just, it's a little more blurry because it's made to run on all hardware. And NVIDIA's stuff runs on custom hardware built onto the chip. So they have a little bit of an advantage there. However, if you don't give a crap about ray tracing, which a lot of people don't, especially when you're playing competitive first-person shooters, because that just eats up your frames per second, and you want as many of those as possible. Or even just, you know, ray tracing, don't decide it doesn't add very much to you. You can still use it. You'll just have to tweak your settings to get it balanced. AMD is a pretty good competitor right now. As for the RTX 40 cards, coming from a 2070 hierarchy, referencing of course Tom's hardware, and the GPU benchmark hierarchy. They keep this constantly updated. They look at the performance on tons of different video cards and rate them against the fastest one on the market, which right now is as a percentage of how fast it is. Looking down the list here, the 70 comes in just behind the RTX 3060. So pretty much any of the, let's see, 2070 is at 46, half the performance. Look at what the 60 offers. A little over half. You're close to a 4060. A 4060 is still a little bit faster than your 2070. What you would want to look for to get an actual performance boost over what you want right now, I would say get no less than an RTX 4070, which that's $574. That, depending on which one you get, that might be above your budget. Maybe you want to look used or something. Also, this around the same performance level, I would note that you can get an RTX 3070, not RTX 3080, for around $400 used. So that's close to an RTX 4070. They're very, very closely matched in performance level. That's if you absolutely are not happy with your performance and you need something right now. Anything less than a 4070, I think you're going to be disappointed. You're not going to see enough of a make it worth replacing your. As to waiting for the RTX 50 series, coming from a 2070, maybe you want to do this. Maybe. By all indications, we're not going to see the RTX 2070, or not. We're not going to see the RTX 50 series until early to middle 2025. So we're at least a year out from the next crop of graphics cards. Now, the good news there is hopefully, unless NVIDIA wants to totally screw it all over, they might. They've been enjoying doing that lately. Hopefully what it means is performance should drop down a tier. So you might be able to grab something like whatever the 5060 is and get performance that's close to an RTX 3080. Which right now is a pretty good card. That's what I'm using. But understand that's a long time. If you're happy with it now, okay. If you're not, maybe you want to look. But Radeon is viable. I would not discount that, especially considering there will be some longevity there. They add more RAM to their cards as opposed to NVIDIA, so you'll be able to use it for longer with higher, as games evolve, you'll have better use of it in just your tessellation. That's tessellation. rasterization. That's the word. You'll have better experience with pure rasterization, which is pure frames per second, because as textures expand, you'll have the video memory. But I personally, I mean, unless you're willing to drop $600 on 40 series, maybe look for a used 40 series, because coming up soon, PM at the start of next year, they're going to be announcing the 4070 Super, 4080 Super, and the laughably named 4070 Ti Super. Ow, can't believe it. That's a those are going to be entering the product stack. Some of the other cards will be retiring. You may find some deals on those as they go out of the channel. You might find some deals on those used. Well, if you can't wait, I would give it a few months, January, February, to get the RTX, the 40 series super cards into the market, and see if maybe you can get a good deal. That's my take. I mean, it's all how much you want to wait, how much you're willing to spend. That's what it all comes down to. I personally, I'm waiting for the 50 series to upgrade because I'm sitting on an RTX 3080. It is not the fastest card on the market anymore, but I would have to spend at least $700 for an RTX 4070 Ti to see a significant upgrade over what I already have. And I don't consider that a good investment. I don't consider, my idea is I want to wait for maybe a 5070 or 5080, because hopefully that'll be a big jump over. Presumably the 5080 will give us 4090 performance. We don't know. NVIDIA's, like I said, NVIDIA's been having a lot of fun just making people miserable. All right. Otaku Boy T's got the last one here. I've got an R5 2600 planning to upgrade to a 5800 X3D. Do you think it will go down any more than it already has? Or do you think that since it's the best in slot, it's as low as it will go? I expect it will go back up once AMD says they stop making it. I think the announcement of the 5700 X3D and 5500 X3D keep these cranking out for a few years more.
That's a tough one, because we don't, I mean, obviously no insider knowledge.
They have been selling well. They are obviously making new ones, which is where the 5600 X3D, the 5700 X3D, and the 5500 X3D are the result of failed 5800 X3D that couldn't meet the specifications, but were still functional processors. So they just downclocked them and marked them down the product stack. That means they are still in production. They're still making new 5800 X3Ds from the I think 7 nanometer. Let me look at what the process. Ryzen 5000. What's lithography is. As lithographies get older, using them on older product production lines is more cost effective. It was 7 nanometer, yeah. Everything's moving to 5 and 3 nanometer, so it's still cost effective to make them. I think, however, yeah, what we said, or this goes back to what we said earlier, or what I said earlier about what AMD, the junk AMD is pulling, in that AMD is using AM4 as their budget entry into the market. Even though it's not officially and it's old technology, it's the de facto budget AMD. So as far as prices going down anymore, let me see. 30. 320, sorry. Yeah, 320. I don't expect to see it. I don't expect to see it go much lower. Maybe you'll get it around 299 at some point. But I don't expect to see it to leave that range. And the reason why is its closest AM5 competitor that it's close to in performance is the 7600X. Now that one's only $230 for that CPU. But you have to buy a new motherboard and new RAM with it. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to have their cake and eat it too with the 5800X3. And all that extra performance, but they want to make you pay for it. They want to see a profit off this. Now, the price is relatively low compared to the performance you get out of it. You know, it's still, I don't think they're going to be dropping the prices on those any noticeable degree. Maybe you'll see a sale here and there, but I think until the announcement of the Ryzen 8000 series, going to come early next year, and those actually entering the market, which probably middle of next year, spring, summer, you're not going to see any significant price drops on the 5800 on the 5000 series. Now, that having been said, we're in a weird position right now. AM4 has, the longevity of that platform has been unheard of in years in PCs. So, yeah, it's I don't know. I don't think you're not gonna see a price. Let's just say you're not gonna see prices go down any lower for at least 6 months or more. If you want to get one, now's the time to pull the trigger. Because if you're just waiting around for a price drop, like maybe wait for a sale, but if you're waiting for a significant price drop, I think they're about as low as they're going to get for 6 months. They'll probably change. Caleb Demand. All right. Normally from now on, I'd ask you to send us an email, but you're in the channel, your first time chatter. I'll give you this one. Sorry, I just came in for a question since I'm not very techy, but I saw a computer on Facebook Marketplace, 850 Canadian, i9 9900K and 3060 Ti, 4 gigs of RAM. Is that a really good deal? 850. Let me look at the conversion right
now. How many Canadian dollars?
850.
That's 629 American.
i9 9900K. I don't like that as a deal because there's no real good upgrade path there. The 3060 Ti you can keep and use for a long while. 64 gigs of DDR4, that's kind of nice. But that 9900K and that motherboard, you are locked in. You're not gonna, you're not going to be a lot of upgrade room with that. For the price for $850 for just comparable for 600 US. Well, we just did the build guide for 600. I can't say you'd be well served buying something at that price range. I wouldn't go with it. I wouldn't go with something that, if I'm gonna go with an older computer, I would look for something on if you want a deal used, look for something based on AMD's AM4 platform. Ryzen 1000 series, Ryzen 2000, 3000, or 5000. Any of those. In fact, you're probably going to find a deal on maybe a Ryzen 1000 or 2000. Ryzen 1000 CPU or 2000 CPU. And the reason you're going to find a deal there is they're going to be older, but even the oldest, most of them are supported BIOS upgrades. Even the oldest Ryzen motherboard, AM4 motherboard, can take the newest of the AM4. So you still have a little bit of an upgrade path there. Like if you get an AM4, you can put some, like, you spend what you can now, you can put a little bit more into it later and get more performance out of it. If you could find a good deal on an AM4 system, you could probably keep that viable and useful for 2. So if you're looking for something used, that's where I would look to grab something. All right, I think that is it for tonight. Let me double check, see if we can get anything else new. Yeah, it's gonna be it. All right, folks. Okay. We'll be back next week. Next week is when we're our mid-range mainstream build, whatever we call it. $1,200 limit. Double the budget deal, $1,200. We'll see what we can put together for a $1,200 PC. And you might be going, I can't afford that. Well, maybe you can get some ideas for parts you can add to. We'll be back next week, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you have tech questions, go ahead and send those in through the week. We'll gather them up and answer them. Until next time, see you then. Bye, everybody.